Listen closely, my children, for this is the story of how the sky first learned to weep, and the earth drank its fill.
They say when a goddess weeps, the earth remembers. When a goddess turns her face away, the earth forgets how to give. It had been 17 years. 17 years since the maize stood tall. 17 years since children played in fields heavy with harvest. 17 years since the goddess Nyamwezi blessed the red soil of our village, Kibaha, nestled in the heart of Tanzania's forgotten valleys. The elders still remembered the day everything changed. It was Chief Baraka who did it, Chief Baraka with his new ideas, his new gods brought by men from across the great waters. "We don't need her anymore," he had declared in the village square, his voice booming with the arrogance of a man who had forgotten where his grandfather's bones were buried. "These old spirits, these old ways, they keep us in darkness." Elder Zubri had fallen to his knees that day. "My chief, the covenant. Our ancestors made a promise to Nyamwezi. Every harvest moon, we offer the first fruits at her sacred baobab. We sing the songs of gratitude. We." Enough. Baraka's hand had slammed against the meeting stone. "I am chief here. The missionaries say these are demons, not gods. We will build their church where her tree stands." The old woman, Mama Faraha, keeper of the ancient songs, had stood trembling. "Chief Baraka, please. She has protected us for 10 generations. The baobab is her home, the well is her tears, the wind is her. Cut it down." Those 3 words changed everything. The men had approached the sacred baobab at dawn, axes gleaming. But Baraka had insisted he would strike the first blow himself. To show the village there was nothing to fear. The entire village had gathered, some weeping, others silent with terror, a few nodding with approval at this new age of progress. Baraka had raised the axe high. The metal bit deep into the ancient bark. And the goddess had screamed. Not with her voice, no human ears could contain that sound. But the earth screamed. The sky screamed. Every bird within 10 miles took flight at once, a black cloud of wings and terror. The well water turned red as sunset. The wind that rose carried the scent of burning, though nothing burned. Then, silence. The kind of silence that happens when something sacred dies. Mama Faraha had collapsed, clutching her chest. "She's gone," the old woman had whispered. "Nyamwezi has turned her face from us. Oh, ancestors, what have we done?" The crops failed within a moon cycle. Not slowly, overnight. Green fields turned brown like paper touched by flame. The rain fell, but nothing grew. The seed sprouted, then withered. The earth had forgotten how to nurture. Year after year, the suffering grew. Families left for the cities. Children's bellies swelled with hunger. The young men went to work in distant mines and never returned. The village that once sang with laughter became a place of whispers and ghosts. Chief Baraka built his church, but its walls stood empty except for dust and regret. And deep in the forest, where the sacred baobab once stood, there was only a stump, black as charred bone, smooth as sorrow. But the elders said if you went there at night, if you pressed your ear to that dead wood, you could hear something. Not anger. Weeping. 17 years after the goddess turned away, Nima was born. Her mother, Asha, nearly died bringing her into the world. The midwife, old Mama Subaira, had worked through the night in the crumbling hut on the village edge, praying to God she wasn't sure we're listening anymore. "Push, daughter. Push." Asha had screamed until her voice was raw. And then, as the first light of dawn touched the thatched roof, the baby came. But she came in silence. No cry. No breath. Just stillness. "No," Asha had sobbed, reaching for her daughter. "No, no, no." Mama Subaira had lifted the tiny body, and that's when it happened. The wind came through the window, warm, carrying the scent of rain on dry earth, though no rain had fallen in weeks. It touched the baby's face like a mother's hand. And Nima gasped. Her first breath was deep, full, like someone surfacing from deep water. And when she opened her eyes, they were different. Not in color, they were brown like any Tanzanian child's, but in the way they looked. Like they were seeing more than what was there. This child. Mama Subaira had whispered, this child has been touched. Asha had held her daughter close, tears streaming. Touched by what? The old midwife had no answer. But she made Asha promise, tell no one about the wind. Tell no one about the moment of silence. Some things are better kept quiet in a village full of fear. Nima grew, but she grew strange. While other children played, she would wander to the forest edge, standing still as stone, head tilted like she was listening to something no one else could hear. Nima, her mother would call. Come away from there. But the child would only turn slowly, those seeing eyes focusing on something beyond her mother's shoulder. Mama, why is she crying? Who, my heart? The woman in the wind. The sad woman who watches us. Asha's blood ran cold. She grabbed her daughter's hand. You hear nothing. You see nothing. Do you understand? But mothers cannot stop what children are born to do. By the time Nima turned 7, everyone in Kibaha knew the girl was different. She would stop mid-step, head turning toward the dead forest. Her lips would move, forming words no one could hear. Sometimes she would cry for no reason, tears streaming down her face while she slept. The villagers whispered. Some said the child was cursed. Others said she was blessed. Most just kept their distance. Chief Baraka, old now and bent with guilt he would never admit, had watched the girl from his compound. Keep that strange child away from the village center, he ordered his son, Jabari, who had inherited much of his father's pride and none of his former confidence. But Asha was fierce in her protection. My daughter harms no one. Your daughter speaks to demons. My daughter speaks to what you tried to destroy. That night, village guards appeared at Asha's door. Not to arrest, but to warn. Chief Jabari says if the child continues to disturb the peace, there will be consequences. Asha held Nima tighter, feeling her daughter's small heart racing against her chest. In the distance, the wind moved through the dead forest, and she could have sworn, just for a moment, she heard it too. A woman's voice. Crying. On Nima's 10th birthday, the drought grew worse. The emergency aid from the government had stopped coming. The nearest town had closed its market to Kibaha's traders, too much desperation, too much theft. 3 more families packed what little they owned and left in the night. The village was dying, and everyone knew it. It was Mama Furaha, ancient now and nearly blind, who came to Asha's hut one evening. The old keeper of songs moved slowly, leaning on a staff made from the last branch of the sacred baobab. I need to speak with the child, she said. Asha stood blocking the doorway. No. You know what the chief said. Jabari is a fool playing at power in a kingdom of dust. Mama Furaha's clouded eyes seemed to see straight through Asha. The girl hears her, doesn't she? Here's Nyamwezi. Silence. I thought so. The old woman's voice cracked with emotion. 17 years I have prayed for this. 17 years I have kept the old songs alive, even though no one sings them. The goddess, she has not abandoned us completely. She sent this child. To do what? Asha's voice broke. To be called a demon. To be driven out. To listen. Mama Furaha reached out a wrinkled hand, finding Nima's small one with surprising accuracy. Come, little one. It's time you understood what you're hearing. They went at midnight, Nima, Mama Furaha, and Asha trailing behind with fear in her throat. The forest at the village edge was not like normal forests. Where the sacred baobab had stood, nothing else would grow. Just dead earth in a perfect circle, and at its center, the blackened stump. Mama Furaha knelt before it, her old bones creaking. Nyamwezi, she spoke to the darkness, I bring you the child. The one you touched with your breath. The one you chose. The wind shifted. Nima felt it first, a change in the air, a tightening of invisible strings. The hairs on her arms rose. Her breath came faster. Don't be afraid, Mama Furaha whispered. She won't hurt you. She's never wanted to hurt anyone. That's not why she turned away. Then why? Nima's voice was small in the vast darkness. Put your hand on the stump, child. Ask her yourself. Asha lunged forward. No. What if? But Nima had already moved. Her small brown hand touched the blackened wood. The world exploded with light. Not the light of fire or sun, the light of memory, of time folding backward. Nima gasped as images flooded her mind. The baobab in its glory, massive beyond measure, its branches holding the sky. A woman made of wind and starlight, sitting among the roots, singing. Children playing at her feet, laughing, safe. Offerings of honey and grain placed in the hollow of the tree. Songs rising like smoke. Love. Generations of love. Then. The axe. The betrayal. The breaking of the covenant not just in action, but in Baraka's words, we don't need her anymore. And beneath it all, beneath every image, a sound that shattered Nima's heart. Weeping. Such weeping as the child had never imagined. Not the weeping of anger or revenge, but the weeping of a mother abandoned by her children. The weeping of love unreturned. She's not angry, Nima sobbed, her hand still pressed to the stump. She's heartbroken. She's so sad. Yes, came a voice like wind through reeds, like water over stones, like the earth itself given speech. Finally, someone hears. Mama Furaha began to cry. Goddess? Goddess, you speak. Through the child. The voice came not from the air, but from Nima's mouth, though her eyes had rolled back, showing only white. Through the only one who listened when no one else would. Asha grabbed for her daughter, but Mama Furaha caught her wrist. Wait. This is sacred. Nima's body swayed. When she spoke again, it was her own voice, but carrying echoes of something far older. She says she never wanted to leave. But the covenant was not just about offerings. It was about remembering. About knowing where your blessings come from. About gratitude. The girl's tears streamed freely now. When Chief Baraka said they didn't need her anymore, when he cut the tree, he didn't just break a promise. He broke her heart. How can you bless those who deny you exist? How can you nurture those who call you a demon? Tell her we're sorry. Mama Furaha collapsed forward, pressing her forehead to the dead earth. Tell her we remember. Tell her. She knows what you remember, Mama Furaha. She hears every song you sing in secret. Nima's voice was gentle now, full of a compassion no child her age should possess. But it's not enough. It's not enough for one old woman to remember when an entire village has forgotten. The light faded. Nima stumbled backward, and Asha caught her. For a long moment, there was only silence and the sound of 3 women breathing. Then Nima looked up at her mother with eyes that had seen beyond the veil. Mama, I know what I have to do. No, Asha whispered. Whatever it is, no. But the old songs say that when the gods choose a vessel, the vessel cannot refuse. The child who heard had become the child who would speak. And in a village built on broken promises, truth is the most dangerous gift of all. Word spread like wildfire through dead grass. The strange child, Nima, daughter of Asha, had touched the cursed stump and lived. More than lived. She had spoken with the goddess. Some said it was blasphemy. Others said it was their only hope. Within 3 days, desperate villagers began appearing at Asha's hut. A mother whose child was wasting away. A man whose wife had died in childbirth, leaving him with twins he couldn't feed. An elder whose legs no longer worked, who crawled on his belly through the dust. Please, they begged. Ask the goddess for help. Ask her to return. Ask her to save us. Nima sat on the threshold of her home, feeling the weight of their need pressing against her like a physical force. She was 10 years old. Just 10. But when she closed her eyes, she could hear Nyamwezi's voice in the wind, feel the goddess's sorrow in every gust. I can't promise anything, she told them, her young voice steady despite her fear. The goddess doesn't obey me. I can hear her. Then listen. A woman thrust her sick child forward. Listen and tell us what we must do. Nima's hand found the child's forehead. It burned with fever. She closed her eyes. The wind shifted. She says. Nima's breath hitched, she says the child needs the bark of the nyanya tree, boiled with honey and rainwater. But there is no rainwater. The well, someone shouted. The well water. No. Nima's eyes snapped open. The well turned red when the covenant broke. Its water is grief, not healing. You need rainwater. Clean rainwater. But it hasn't rained in. Thunder rolled across the cloudless sky. Everyone froze. Nima stood slowly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Her lips moved in words that weren't quite a language, more like a memory of song. The air around her began to shimmer with heat. She hears you, Nima whispered. The goddess hears your pain. She never stopped hearing. But hearing and answering are different things. What does that mean? The desperate mother cried. It means. Nima turned to face the gathered crowd, and in that moment, she looked nothing like a child. It means you have to show her you remember. You have to show her you're sorry. Not with words. With action. Old Mama Furaha pushed through the crowd, her face alight with understanding. The covenant. We must restore the covenant. Yes, Nima said. But it's more than offerings now. The wound is deeper. You have to acknowledge what was taken. You have to rebuild what was destroyed. You have to. Enough. Chief Jabari strode into the gathering, his warriors flanking him. Young and proud like his father before him, he carried the weight of inherited shame turned to anger. I warned you, Asha. I warned you to keep this child quiet. Asha stepped in front of her daughter. She's done nothing wrong. She's turning the village against me. Against progress. Jabari pointed at Nima. These are the same backward beliefs that kept our ancestors in poverty. My father was right to cut down that tree. The wind rose so suddenly, so violently, that several people fell to their knees. Dust devils spun in the compound. The sky darkened though the sun still blazed. And Nima spoke, but the voice that came from her mouth made strong men tremble. Your father was not right. Your father was a fool. And you are a greater fool for defending his shame. Jabari stumbled backward. I am Nyamwezi. The voice thundered through the child. I am the blood in this soil. I am the breath in the wind. I am the first rain and the last harvest. And I was here before your grandfather's grandfather drew breath. It's a trick. Jabari shouted, though his voice shook. The child is possessed by demons. Is that what you call me? The wind howled. After 10 generations of blessing? After I caught your grandmother when she fell from the cliffs? After I led your people to water during the great drought? After I held every stillborn child of your village in my arms and wept with their mothers? Silence fell like a hammer. Nima swayed, her small body struggling to contain such power. She says. Her own voice breaking through, small and frightened, she says you don't have to believe in her. But you can't erase her. You can't cut down the sacred and expect no consequences. Tears streamed down the child's face. She says she loved you. All of you. That's why it hurt so much to be forgotten. The gathered villagers began to weep. Some fell to their knees. Others pressed their faces to the dust. But Chief Jabari stood rigid, his pride and fear locked in battle across his face. "This is not over," he said quietly, dangerously. Then he turned and walked away, his warriors following. As the divine presence faded, Nima collapsed into her mother's arms. She was just a child again, exhausted, terrified, trembling. But something had changed. For the first time in 17 years, the villagers of Kibaha remembered what it felt like to stand in the presence of the sacred. And on the far horizon, against all possibility, a single cloud began to form. News of the girl who spoke for Nyamwezi spread beyond Kibaha. Within a week, people began arriving from neighboring villages. Some came out of curiosity. Others came with desperate hope. They brought their sick, their dying, their questions about the future. Nima sat beneath a makeshift shelter, nothing more than cloth stretched between poles, and listened. She listened to their pain. She listened to the wind. She listened to the voice of the goddess woven through both. Sometimes she could offer help, plant at the new moon, not the full. The sickness comes from the water source near the dead goat. Your ancestor wants you to know she forgives you. Sometimes she could only offer truth, the goddess cannot bring back the dead. Some suffering has no purpose but to teach you what you can endure. Not all prayers are answered the way we wish. The people loved her for both. But love and fear are close cousins. In his compound, Chief Jabari paced like a caged lion. His advisors sat in uncomfortable silence, knowing their chief's mood had grown darker with each passing day. "She's making me look weak," Jabari growled. "Every person who goes to that child instead of coming to me, every problem she solves that I could not, it undermines everything." "My chief," one advisor ventured carefully, "perhaps this is an opportunity. If the girl truly speaks for the goddess, maybe we could use her." A new voice cut through the room. Everyone turned as a man entered. He was tall, thin, dressed in robes of deep red. His name was Masood, and he had arrived in Kibaha 3 days ago claiming to be a holy man from the north. But there was something about his eyes, they held the glitter of ambition rather than devotion. "Chief Jabari," Masood bowed slightly, "I have been observing this situation. I believe I can help you solve your problem. I'm listening." Masood smiled, and it was the smile of a snake that has spotted prey. "The girl has power. Real power. But she's untrained, undisciplined. She speaks for the goddess now, yes, but imagine if we could convince her to speak for you instead. She would never. Not directly. But consider this, what if the goddess's message became, aligned with your goals? What if this Nyamwezi demanded that the people obey their chief? What if she proclaimed that you should lead the restoration of the covenant?" Jabari's eyes narrowed with interest. "The girl is devoted to truth. The girl is 10 years old." Masood circled the room like a predator. "And truth, my chief, is often what powerful men decide it to be. Give me time with her. Let me become her teacher, her guide. I have studied the old religions, the old manipulations, traditions." His smile widened. "Children are so very easy to influence. And if she refuses? Then we try a different approach." Masood's hand rested on a leather pouch at his belt. "I know herbs. I know powders. I know how to make visions seem like divine messages. If the girl won't serve your purposes willingly, we can make her think the goddess herself commands it." In the shadows of the compound, a young servant girl named Zuri listened, her blood running cold. She had served Chief Jabari since childhood, but she remembered the old ways. Her grandmother had been one of Nyamwezi's devotees. As soon as Masood and Jabari finished their plotting, Zuri slipped away into the night. She ran through the darkened village, her feet swift and sure on paths she'd known since childhood. When she reached Asha's hut, she was gasping for breath. "Mama Asha. Mama Asha, please." Asha emerged, Nima peering around her mother's waist. "The chief," Zuri panted, "and a stranger called Masood. They're plotting against Nima. They want to use her, or poison her visions if she won't cooperate." Asha's face went white. "No. No, we're leaving. Tonight. We'll go to Mama." Nima's small hand found her mother's. "We can't run." "Yes, we can. We can go to the city, change our names. The goddess didn't choose someone who runs." Despite her youth, Nima's voice carried absolute certainty. She chose someone who listens. Who speaks truth even when truth is dangerous. "You're a child. I'm a vessel." Nima looked up at her mother with eyes far too old for her face. "And the goddess says this was always going to happen. Masood has been coming for a long time. He goes from village to village, finding people with real gifts, then twisting them for profit and power." Zuri stared at the girl in amazement. "How do you know that?" "The wind knows everything," Nima said simply. "The goddess has been watching him. Waiting. She says he's the test." "Test for what?" Asha demanded. Nima turned to face the direction of the dead forest, where the sacred stump stood in its circle of barren earth. "For whether we've truly learned. Whether we'll protect what's sacred, or let it be corrupted again." Thunder rumbled, though the night sky remained clear. "The goddess is angry," Nima whispered. "Not at us. At him. At all the Masoods of the world who turn faith into a weapon. She says." The child's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She says this time, she won't turn away in sorrow. This time, if her vessel is threatened, she will respond with something humans understand much better than grief." "What's that?" Zuri asked. Nima's eyes reflected moonlight like mirrors. "Fury." Masood arrived at Asha's hut the next morning wearing his most gentle smile. "Peace be upon this home," he called out, his voice smooth as honey. "I am Masood, a humble student of the divine. I've traveled far to meet the blessed child." Asha stood in the doorway, her body a barrier. "My daughter needs no teacher." "Of course not. The goddess herself teaches her." Masood bowed respectfully. "I merely wish to offer protection. A child with such gifts, there are those who might wish her harm. Like Chief Jabari." Nima's voice came from inside the hut. Masood's smile never wavered, though his eyes flickered with surprise. "The chief is concerned for the village. As am I. Perhaps we could speak, child to teacher, about how best to serve both the goddess and your community." "The goddess and my community are not in conflict," Nima said, emerging to stand beside her mother. "Only men like you create that division." The false prophet's smile finally cracked. "Careful, child. Arrogance in one so young is nothing compared to arrogance in one who claims to speak for the divine while serving only himself." Nima's gaze was steady. "The wind told me about you, Masood. About the girl in Morogoro whose visions you twisted until her own village stoned her. About the prophet in Dodoma whose teachings you corrupted for the governor's gold. About the—" "Enough." Masood's mask fell away completely, revealing the predator beneath. "You know nothing, child. I know everything the goddess knows. And she has been watching you for a very, very long time." Masood's hand moved toward his belt, toward the pouch of powders and poisons. But before he could reach it, the wind rose with violent force. The pouch tore free and scattered into the air, its contents exploding in a cloud of multicolored dust. Masood stumbled backward, coughing. "Leave this village," Nima said quietly. The goddess gives you this one chance. Leave, and never corrupt another child's gift. For a moment, rage and fear warred on Masood's face. Then he turned and fled, his red robes billowing behind him. But as he reached the village center, he didn't head for the road out. Instead, he went straight to Chief Jabari's compound. Plan B, he snarled to the chief. The girl won't cooperate. So we take her by force. Jabari hesitated. Take her. The people will riot. Not if we claim she's possessed by demons. Masood's mind worked quickly, spinning new lies. Not if we say we're saving her. We'll lock her in your compound, keep her isolated. Then we slowly introduce our own divine messages that she conveniently confirms. Break her will, reshape her purpose. And if that doesn't work? Masood's expression turned cold. Then we make her disappear and find someone more controllable to claim the goddess speaks through them. One child prophet is much like another. What they didn't know was that the wind carried every word to every corner of Kibaha. And the goddess was done with patience. That afternoon, as Masood and Jabari gathered their warriors to seize Nima, the sky began to change. Clouds gathered, not gentle clouds, but towering thunderheads that turned day to twilight. In her hut, Nima stood perfectly still. Mama, she said softly, it's time. Time for what? For everyone to see what happens when you threaten what the goddess has chosen to protect. The warriors marched through the village, Jabari and Masood at their head. Villagers scattered or watched from doorways, fear and uncertainty keeping them silent. When they reached Asha's hut, Jabari called out, Nima, daughter of Asha. By order of the chief, you are to come with us. For your own protection. Protection from what? Asha shouted back. From the demon that possesses her, Masood announced loudly, performing for the watching crowd. I have seen this before. The voice she hears is not the goddess, but a deceiving spirit. She must be cleansed. Murmurs rippled through the gathered villagers. The warriors moved forward. And Nima walked out to meet them. The child stood in the center of the compound, small and alone. But there was something about her, a stillness, a presence, that made the warriors hesitate. Nima, Jabari said more gently, come willingly. We don't want to use force. No, Nima said simply. Child, don't make this difficult. I'm not making anything difficult. You are. Nima looked up at the darkening sky. You were warned, Chief Jabari. You were given so many chances to choose differently. But you're like your father, too proud to admit when you're wrong, too afraid to accept that some powers are greater than your own. Seize her. Masood shouted. The warriors surged forward. And the goddess arrived. The earth didn't just shake, it roared. The warriors froze mid-step as the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Across the village, cooking pots fell. Walls cracked. The old church that Chief Baraka had built where the sacred baobab once stood, its walls began to crumble. And the wind. Oh, the wind. It rose like a living thing, a force with consciousness and rage. It spun around Nima in a spiral, lifting her feet from the ground. Her hair whipped wildly, her simple cloth dress billowed, and her eyes began to glow with golden light. Enough. The voice that came from the child's mouth was not a child's voice. It was the voice of stone and storm, of roots deep beneath the earth and stars beyond counting. It was the voice of Nyamwezi herself, and it shook every soul in Kibaha to its core. 17 years, the goddess spoke through Nima, I turned my face away in sorrow. 17 years I wept for children who had forgotten me. I could have struck in anger. I could have sent flood or fire or plague. But I am not a goddess of destruction. I am a goddess of the growing things, the living things, the things that bloom in darkness and persist through drought. Masood fell to his knees, his face drained of color. But there are limits, the voice continued, even to divine patience. You dare to threaten my chosen vessel? You dare to plot against the only soul pure enough to hear my grief? The wind intensified. Warriors dropped their spears, covering their heads. Look at me, Jabari. The young chief raised his eyes to Nima, no, to the goddess inhabiting her small form, and what he saw there made him weep. You carry your father's shame, Nyamwezi said, and now there was sorrow mixed with the anger. You wear his mistakes like armor, defending them because to admit he was wrong would mean admitting you've been wrong too. How exhausting that must be. How heavy. Jabari's lips trembled. I only wanted. I know what you wanted. The same thing your father wanted. To be powerful without being accountable. To receive blessing without giving gratitude. To take what the land offers without honoring what the land is. The goddess's attention shifted to Masood, still kneeling in the dust. And you? False prophet. Corrupted of the sacred. How many children have you broken? How many gifts have you twisted? Masood couldn't speak. He could barely breathe. You thought you could control this? The wind around Nima became a visible thing, golden light and shadow dancing together. You thought you could poison my vessel and speak lies in my name? Please, Masood whispered, I didn't. Do not add more lies to your collection. The earth beneath Masood began to crack. Not deeply, not dangerously, but enough. Enough to show that the goddess could swallow him whole if she chose. I should, Nyamwezi mused, and the casual tone was somehow more terrifying than the anger. I should take you into the earth and let you feel what it's like to be forgotten in the dark. To cry out and have no one listen. The villagers watched in stunned silence. Some prayed. Others wept. All understood they were witnessing something that would be told and retold for generations. But I am not like you, the goddess continued. I do not take pleasure in suffering, even the suffering of those who deserve it. So I will give you the same mercy you gave those children you destroyed. None. Masood screamed as his body began to change. Not violently, but thoroughly. His hair turned white as bone. His hands withered like dead leaves. His voice, when he tried to speak, came out as a croak, hoarse, broken, unable to form the smooth lies he'd once wielded like weapons. You will live, Nyamwezi pronounced, but every word you speak will sound like the lies they are. Every promise you make will taste like ash in your mouth. And every child you see will make you remember what you were willing to destroy for power. Masood collapsed forward, sobbing. The goddess turned her attention back to Jabari. The wind gentled slightly around Nima's hovering form. You, Jabari, I will give a choice. The same choice I gave your father, though he never knew it. Will you continue his path of denial? Or will you be the one who breaks the cycle? Jabari's face was wet with tears. Around him, his warriors had dropped their weapons. The entire village had gathered now, watching their chief face judgment. Jabari's voice broke. I don't know how to fix this. My father cut down your tree. My father broke the covenant. How can I undo what's already done? You cannot undo it, Nyamwezi said, and there was almost gentleness in her voice now. The sacred baobab is gone. That hurt cannot be erased. But you can acknowledge it. You can stop defending the indefensible. You can say the words that your father could not. Silence fell across the compound. Jabari looked at the hovering child, at the golden light in her eyes, at the goddess who had been patient far beyond what any human could manage. And then Chief Jabari, son of Baraka, leader of Kibaha, fell to his knees in the dust. We were wrong, he said, and the words seemed to tear from his chest. My father was wrong. I was wrong. We should never have cut down your tree. We should never have said we didn't need you. We should never have forgotten. His voice rose, raw with emotion. I'm sorry. Oh goddess, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Around him, the villagers began to echo his words. We're sorry. We're sorry. Forgive us. Even Mama Furaha, who had never stopped believing, was crying now. The golden light around Nima began to soften, to warm. The wind gentled from storm to breeze. Finally, the goddess whispered. Finally, someone speaks the truth. And then, for the first time in 17 years, it began to rain. The rain fell like tears of joy. It soaked into the dust. It ran in rivulets through the cracked earth. It pattered against thatched roofs and pooled in the hollows of rocks. And everyone, every single soul in Kibaha, stood with faces upturned, letting the water wash over them. Nima drifted slowly to the ground, the golden light fading from her eyes. She stumbled, and Asha was there instantly, catching her daughter. Nima. Nima, are you? I'm okay, Mama. But the child's voice was exhausted, thin as paper. Just, tired. The goddess's presence had withdrawn, but not departed. Everyone could still feel her, in the rain, in the renewed wind, in the way the earth seemed to breathe again. Chief Jabari remained on his knees, rain streaming down his face. What must we do? He called out. How do we restore the covenant? Nima lifted her head from her mother's shoulder. When she spoke, it was her own voice, but carrying echoes of divine wisdom. The goddess says, rebuild the sacred space. Not just with stones and wood, but with understanding. Plant a new baobab where the old one stood, it will grow, though you won't live to see it reach its full height. Restore the songs. Teach the children the old ways alongside the new. Remember that progress doesn't require forgetting where you came from. Mama Furaha stepped forward, leaning heavily on her staff. And the offerings? The harvest ritual? Yes, Nima nodded. But the goddess says it's not about the grain or honey. It never was. It's about the gratitude. The acknowledgement. The relationship. We'll do it, someone shouted from the crowd. All of it, another voice added. We'll teach the songs to our children. We'll protect the new tree. The enthusiasm was genuine, but Nima felt a shadow cross her heart. She looked to where Masood still knelt, now a broken man with a broken voice, and understood something the others didn't yet. There's more, she said quietly. The celebration faltered. What more? Jabari asked, fear creeping back into his voice. Nima closed her eyes. Listened to the wind. Felt the goddess's message settle into her bones. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with tears. The goddess says, she will return. She will bless the land again. But the vessel she chose, her voice broke, the vessel must go with her. Silence. No, Asha breathed. No, you can't mean. When the covenant is restored, Nima continued, her own tears mixing with the rain, when the new baobab is planted and the first ritual is performed, the goddess will take me to her sacred place. Not as punishment. As honor. She says I will become her voice permanently. Her bridge between the spirit world and this one. You're 10 years old. Asha's scream tore through the compound. You're my daughter. You're just a child. Nima turned to her mother, and in her young face was understanding beyond her years. I was chosen before I was born, Mama. You remember. The silence when I came into the world. The wind that brought me breath. This was always meant to be. I don't accept it. Asha grabbed her daughter's shoulders. I won't let you go. We'll run, we'll hide, we'll. You'll deny the goddess again? Mama Furaha's voice was gentle but firm. After everything? After seeing her power? After witnessing her mercy? Asha turned on the old woman with fury. It's easy for you to talk about sacrifice when it's not your child. No. Mama Furaha's eyes were wet. It's not easy. It's never easy. But some things are bigger than our individual pain. She's right, Mama. Nima's small hand touched her mother's cheek. The goddess says, she says I won't be alone. I'll live in the sacred forest, in the place between worlds. And you'll be able to visit. To talk to me. It's not death. It's just, different. Around them, the villagers were quiet, many crying. Even Jabari, who had started all this by trying to seize the child, looked shattered. How long? Asha whispered. How long do I have? Nima listened to the wind. 7 days. The goddess gives you 7 days to prepare. Then we plant the new baobab, perform the first ritual, and... She couldn't finish the sentence. Asha pulled her daughter close, holding her like she could somehow prevent the inevitable. The rain continued to fall, gentle now, healing. Across the village, the ground that had been dead for 17 years began to remember what it meant to nurture. Seeds that had lain dormant stirred in the wet earth. But in Asha's heart, a different kind of storm was just beginning. The village transformed in those 7 days. Men who had been too weak from hunger found strength to dig. Women who had lost hope found voices to sing. The old songs, the ones Mama Furaha had kept alive in secret, now echoed through Kibaha from dawn to dusk. They cleared the dead circle where the sacred baobab had stood. They prepared the earth with prayer and tears. And on the 5th day, a delegation traveled to the distant sacred groves to carefully, reverently, dig up a young baobab sapling. The tree was small, barely taller than Nima herself, but healthy and strong. Its roots would dig deep. Its branches would one day shelter generations yet unborn. Through it all, Nima spent every moment she could with her mother. They talked. They sang together. They cooked meals side by side. They slept wrapped in each other's arms, Asha's tears dampening her daughter's hair. Tell me again, Asha would whisper in the night, tell me you'll be okay. And Nima would answer, as patient as she'd always been, I'll be more than okay, Mama. I'll be sacred. I'll be protected. I'll be loved by the goddess herself. But I'm your mother. You'll always be my mother. That doesn't change. On the 7th morning, the entire village gathered at the sacred circle. Chief Jabari stood before them, transformed by his acknowledgement of truth. 17 years ago, he said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd, my father committed a great wrong. He broke our covenant with Nyamwezi. He said we didn't need her. He was wrong. And I, in defending his choice, was wrong too. He gestured to the young baobab, its roots wrapped in sacred cloth. Today we plant this tree. Today we restore what was broken. Today we remember. Mama Furaha began to sing. The old songs, the sacred songs, the songs that called the goddess home. Other voices joined hers. Slowly at first, then building, then swelling into a chorus that made the very air vibrate with power. Nima stood beside the young tree, dressed in white cloth that Asha had sewn with shaking hands. Her small brown fingers traced the sapling's bark, and she smiled, a smile of such peace that even Asha, weeping beside her, felt a moment of calm. It's time, Nima said. Together, the village lifted the sapling. Together, they lowered it into the earth. Together, they covered its roots with soil dark and rich with rain. And as the tree settled into its new home, the wind began to rise. Not violently this time. Gently. Like a mother's breath on a newborn's face. The air around the circle began to shimmer. Mama, Nima said, turning to Asha one last time. The goddess wants you to know something. What? Asha could barely speak through her tears. She knows what she's asking of you. She knows the sacrifice mothers make. She says thank you. For raising me to listen. For teaching me to see truth. For being brave enough to let me become what I was meant to be. Asha collapsed to her knees, pulling Nima into a fierce embrace. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you too, Mama. Forever. The shimmer in the air intensified. Shapes began to form, not quite solid, not quite spirit. Other children were there, Nima realized. Children from across time, all chosen, all sacred, all serving as bridges between worlds. And at the center, a figure of impossible beauty. A woman made of wind and starlight, of earth and water, of everything that grows and lives and breathes. Nyamwezi. The goddess reached out a hand toward Nima. The child stood, gently pulling away from her mother's grip. She walked forward on steady feet, no fear in her eyes. As her small hand touched the goddess's hand, light exploded across the circle. Not harsh light, warm light, golden light, the light of 1,000 sunrises. And when it faded, Nima was gone. The villagers stood in stunned silence. Then, from the newly planted baobab, came a voice. Nima's voice, but changed. Resonant. Sacred. I'm here, Mama. I'm here. I'm home. Asha looked at the tree and saw, within its young trunk, a faint golden glow. The outline of a small figure, peaceful and safe. The goddess says, Nima's voice continued, gentle and clear, that I will speak for her now. Whenever you need guidance, come to this tree. Whenever you forget, come and I will remind you. Whenever you suffer, come and I will comfort you. I am not gone. I'm just, different. The rain that had been falling all week intensified for just a moment, then stopped. And when the clouds cleared, the sun broke through with such glory that everyone gasped. Look, someone shouted. Across the village, in fields that had been dead for 17 years, tiny green shoots were pushing through the soil. Maize. Millet. Cassava. All the crops that had refused to grow were sprouting, drinking the blessed rain, reaching for the blessed sun. The goddess had returned. And her prophet would ensure they never forgot again. 6 months later. The fields around Kibaha were thick with growth. Where drought and death had reigned for 17 years, now abundance returned. Not easily, the village still had to work, still had to plant and tend and harvest, but the earth had remembered how to give. Asha came to the sacred baobab every morning. The tree was growing at an impossible rate, already taller than any natural sapling should be after mere months. Its bark gleamed with golden undertones. Its leaves caught the light like emeralds. And if you sat beneath it in the quiet hours, you could hear whispers. Songs. Laughter. Nima's laughter. Good morning, daughter, Asha said, settling herself against the trunk. Good morning, Mama. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, warm as sunlight. Did you bring the honey? Asha smiled through her perpetual sadness. I did. And grain from our first harvest. Chief Jabari himself brought it. He's changed, Nima observed. Yes. Asha poured honey into a bowl at the tree's base, set grain beside it. The offerings for Nyamwezi. He leads differently now. With humility. The people trust him again. And Masood? Gone. Some say he wanders the roads, unable to speak without his voice cracking and failing. A living warning of what happens to those who corrupt the sacred. A breeze rustled the leaves above. Mama, you're sad. I'm always sad, Asha admitted. But I'm also grateful. You're happy, aren't you? So happy. The voice filled with warmth. The goddess teaches me such things, Mama. I see how everything connects. How the wind carries seeds. How rain becomes rivers. How pain can transform into purpose. I serve her, and through her, I serve everyone. Footsteps approached. Mama Furaha, now teaching the sacred songs to a new generation of children, came to join Asha beneath the tree. Good morning, little prophet, the old woman said fondly. Good morning, grandmother Furaha. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just being in the presence of the sacred. Finally, Nima spoke again. The goddess wants you to know something. Both of you. What is it? Asha asked. Other villages are forgetting their covenants too. Other goddesses, other spirits, other sacred bonds, they're being broken all across the land. Men like Chief Baraka and Masood are everywhere, cutting down what should be protected, calling progress what is really just destruction. The tree's leaves trembled. She says I won't be the only child called to this service. There will be others. Must be others. Because the wound is everywhere, and the healing must be everywhere too. Asha's heart clenched. More mothers will lose their children. More mothers will give their children to a purpose bigger than one family's pain, Nima corrected gently. It's not loss, Mama. It's transformation. Mama Faraha nodded slowly. The old stories always said this time would come. When the modern world grows so loud that people stop listening to the ancient rhythms. When progress becomes an excuse to forget where we came from. But we remembered, Nima's voice rang with quiet triumph. Kibaha remembered. And now others will hear our story and remember too. As if in response, a group of travelers appeared at the village edge, people from a distant region, drawn by stories of the village that restored its covenant and regained the goddess's blessing. They came seeking answers. Seeking hope. Seeking to learn how to repair what they had broken in their own lands. Asha watched them approach and understood, this was only the beginning. Will you speak to them? She asked her daughter. Yes. The goddess and I will guide them. We'll tell them what we told you, that you cannot erase the sacred and expect no consequences. That gratitude is not a weakness but a strength. That some relationships must be honored, not because they benefit us, but because they simply are. The travelers drew closer, wonder and desperation mixed on their faces. And from the sacred baobab, golden light began to glow. The lesson. The wind carries the voice of the prophet, now and forever. Listen closely, children of the earth. We forgot that some things should not be forgotten. We broke what should have been kept whole. We said we didn't need what we desperately needed. And when the goddess turned her face away, we learned the hardest lesson, that progress without respect is not progress at all. That power without accountability is just destruction wearing a crown. That you cannot cut down the sacred and expect no consequences. But we also learned this, even the gods can be heartbroken. Even divine love has limits. And when those limits are reached, when the patience of centuries is finally exhausted, what follows is not cruelty. It is justice. The goddess didn't destroy us. She could have. But instead, she waited. She wept. She watched to see if even one soul would remember. Would listen. Would speak the truth that everyone else was too proud or too afraid to acknowledge. And when that soul appeared, a child, small and pure, she chose to give us one more chance. Not because we deserved it. But because that is the nature of divine love. So here is what you must remember, wherever you are, whoever you are. Gratitude is not optional. The bonds between human and divine, between community and land, between past and present, these are not decorations to be discarded when they become inconvenient. They are foundations. Remove them, and everything collapses. Honor what came before you. Learn from it. Grow beyond it if you must, but never pretend it didn't matter. Never say, we don't need this anymore, just because you've forgotten how desperately you do. And if you break something sacred, have the courage to admit it. The words, I was wrong, are small, but they carry the power to restore worlds. This is the covenant, renewed and eternal. We will remember. We will honor. We will teach. We will protect. And in return, the goddess will bless. Not because we've earned it through perfection, but because we've earned it through honesty. Remember this story. Share it. Let it remind you that some things should never be forgotten. From Kibaha to all the world. The goddess is listening. Are you? Thank you for witnessing this tale from Freeside Tales. If the old stories speak to your heart, if you believe that some wisdom should not be lost, then return to us. Subscribe. Come back for more stories from the places where the ancient and modern meet, where the divine and human dance, where truth is spoken even when truth is dangerous. The next story awaits. Will you listen?